Most Microsoft 365 security failures do not happen because organizations lack security tools. They happen because configuration quietly drifts. A conditional access policy is adjusted during troubleshooting. Multi-factor authentication is temporarily relaxed. A security setting is modified to solve an urgent issue and never fully restored. Over time, the environment moves away from its intended security posture, and often, no one notices until an audit or an incident forces the discovery. Microsoft is now beginning to address this problem structurally. Welcome to Interian Security Insights. I'm Drik Desmet. Today we are looking at Tenant Configuration Management and why it represents a fundamental shift in Microsoft governance. For years, tenant security has largely been managed as a periodic exercise. Configuration reviews before audits, manual checks after major changes, scripting and documentation used to approximate a desired state. But Microsoft environments are no longer static. They are dynamic, continuously changing operational platforms, and governance models need to reflect that reality. Tenant Configuration Management introduces a native capability to define an approved configuration baseline, monitor the live tenant against that baseline, and detect drift over time. In practical terms, this moves configuration from a one-time setup activity to a continuously governed control surface. The significance of this shift should not be underestimated. Most organizations already deploy strong security controls across Microsoft Entra, Intune, Microsoft Defender, and Microsoft Purview. The real challenge is maintaining the integrity of those controls over time. Configuration drift remains one of the most persistent and least visible risks in cloud security. Not because teams are careless, but because operational environments are complex and constantly evolving. Tenant Configuration Management effectively acts as a governance layer across the Microsoft security and compliance stack. It enables organizations to monitor whether critical controls remain aligned with the approved baseline and to detect deviations early. For CISOs and governance leaders, this has direct implications for audit readiness and regulatory alignment. Frameworks such as NIS2 increasingly require demonstrable operational oversight rather than point-in-time assurance. It is no longer sufficient to show that controls were configured correctly at a specific moment. Organizations must be able to demonstrate that controls remain effective over time. Continuous configuration governance begins to make that possible. It allows organizations to move from reactive audit preparation to structured, ongoing assurance, from static compliance evidence to continuous verification. At the same time, it is important to remain realistic about maturity. Tenant configuration management is still in an early phase. In its current form, it is not yet fully mature for very large MSSP-scale operations managing thousands of highly customized tenants. There are still gaps to close before it can support that level of operational complexity. However, the direction is clear. Microsoft is signaling that configuration governance will become a native, continuous discipline within the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem. Organizations that begin preparing now will be significantly better positioned as these capabilities mature. There are several practical steps security and governance leaders can already take. First, define an approved configuration baseline. It is impossible to detect drift if the intended state is not clearly defined. Second, identify the controls that represent the highest risk if they change. Privileged access policies, conditional access rules, and core security configurations should be prioritized. Third, establish governance workflows. When a deviation is detected, who evaluates the risk? Who approves remediation? Who validates the outcome? And finally, approach automation carefully. Automatic remediation will become increasingly relevant, but it must be introduced with appropriate oversight and operational awareness. Tenant configuration governance is moving from periodic review to continuous control. Within the next 3 to 5 years, it will likely become a standard control in mature Microsoft environments. Governance is no longer a scheduled activity. It is becoming a runtime discipline embedded directly into the Microsoft Cloud. For a deeper architectural and governance analysis, you can read the full article on Blog.Interian.be. Thank you for listening.